No one could have imagined that an ordinary charity evening would turn into such a moving event, capable of bringing tears to even the most reserved people. In one of the lively areas of Los Angeles, in a concert hall where celebrities traditionally come, a series of events were held in support of a fund to help families facing fatal diseases. The atmosphere was both festive and deeply imbued with a sense of compassion for the misfortune of others. Motivational speakers spoke from the stage, short documentaries were shown about the fates of families affected by these terrible diagnoses, and in the audience there were people donating money, time, and emotional support. Everything was going as usual until it was announced that Keanu Reeves' name was on the guest list. The audience perked up when they heard this. Many knew that the actor tried not to advertise his visits to such events, so the opportunity to see him in person seemed like a real gift. But until the very last moment, no one was sure whether Keanu would actually come in person or simply transfer another amount to the fund's account, as he usually did. When his recognizable figure flashed in the wings, the adrenaline level in the audience noticeably increased. People began to exchange glances, and some rose from their seats to take a photo or take a closer look at him. But Reeves, as always, tried to behave quietly and unnoticed, greeting those present with nods, smiles, and friendly handshakes. The organizers of the evening invited him to the stage to say a few words. He refused for a long time, claiming that he did not want to attract attention to himself, but eventually agreed, promising that it would be a very short speech. Many had already taken out their phones so as not to miss the moment. And indeed, Keanu found himself on the stage, holding a microphone in his hands, and judging by the way he sheepishly adjusted the collar of his shirt, he was clearly not used to pompous speeches. The hall fell silent. Everyone wanted to hear what exactly this man, who possessed a unique combination of worldwide fame and almost childish modesty, would say. He began to talk about the importance of compassion and unity, about the fact that any financial support is only one side of help, and that much more valuable is attention to a person and his story, the ability to listen, to give warmth at the moment when it is most needed. His voice was quiet, but the words penetrated straight to the heart, because they did not contain an ounce of ostentatious rhetoric. These were only a few sentences, but after them there was loud applause in the hall. Having modestly thanked for the reception, Keanu left the stage and headed backstage, trying not to draw attention to himself. But it was there that what everyone was talking about later began. In the corridor stood a young man, apparently barely an adult. He was dressed very simply. Apparently, he had come from far away, and there was awe in his eyes. He could not believe that he was just a few steps away from his idol. This guy came to the charity evening to support his sister, who was sick with a rare disease, who was brought in under a special fund program. She needed expensive treatment, and the family was trying their best to raise money. As it turned out later, the guy was not just a fan of Keanu's work films. With his participation, helped him fight despair, gave hope and faith that life is still beautiful and worth fighting for. He timidly approached one of the assistants and asked if he could meet the actor for at least a few seconds to thank him personally for the inspiration and support he felt through his roles and interviews. The assistant initially shrugged his shoulders, claiming that Reeves was extremely tired and had a very busy schedule. But the guy did not back down. He did not ask for money or special privileges. He just wanted to thank the man he considered a spiritual mentor, albeit in absentia. The situation began to look desperate. The foundation employee was already thinking about how to send the guest away so as not to disturb the actor, because he was surrounded on all sides by people wanting an autograph or a photo. At that moment, as if sensing someone's confusion, Keanu himself approached them. He asked what had happened, and upon hearing that the young fan just wanted to talk for a few seconds, he smiled slightly and said, "Let's find a quiet place." The guy, barely containing his excitement, followed him. Several volunteers led them into a small room used as a props warehouse, where they could hide from the noise and flashes of cameras. The setting there was far from Hollywood glitter. A few boxes, a wooden chair, and a dim light bulb swinging from the ceiling. But it was here that the scene took place that made the man shed tears from an overflow of emotions. At first, the boy couldn't utter a word. He looked at Keanu as if he was afraid to believe that it was really him and not some stunt double or a person who looked like an actor. However, he had even greater doubts that in front of him was not just a world star, but also one of the kindest people, about whom there are so many stories. Shyly, he began to talk about how his sister was sick, that his parents were trying their best to pay for the treatment, but there was not enough money, that life sometimes seemed too difficult and unfair. And then Keanu gently put his hand on the shoulder of his interlocutor and asked, "What is your sister's name? Tell me about her." The boy began to excitedly say that her name was Maria, that she loved to paint landscapes and dreamed of seeing mountains one day, and that she had watched The Matrix dozens of times, because this story gives her hope that the boundaries of our world are wider than it seems, and that everything is possible. They say that at that moment, Keanu's eyes became moist, as if he was empathizing with every letter flying from the lips of the young man. The guy said that after tiring procedures in hospitals, Maria would turn on some Reeves movie. It helped her to distract herself from the pain. And when sometimes the doctors said that the chances were small, she answered, "I know that I will still fight until I see what happens next." He finished his story, and silence fell in the room. Keanu apparently passed everything he said through his own soul, remembering his heavy losses, the pain that he himself had to experience, and which taught him to appreciate any joy. That is why, when he suddenly spoke, there was absolute sincerity in his voice. He asked if he could meet Maria right now, if she was here. The guy was at a loss at first. His sister was lying in a specially equipped room with all the necessary equipment, but Keanu insisted that he would really like to approach her, even for a few minutes, just to talk. No one expected such a turn of events. Usually celebrities do not enter wards without prior arrangement, and doctors may be against unnecessary visits. Moreover, there was equipment there that only medical staff had access to. But the actor, without a moment's hesitation, asked one of the coordinators for permission, saying that he would do everything possible not to interfere with the doctor's work and not to attract unnecessary attention. Only when the coordinator saw how serious Reeves was in his desire, he met him halfway. They walked down a long, dimly lit corridor. Fluorescent lights hummed quietly, and each turn opened another door with a sign with the name of a patient or medical staff. The guy, trembling with excitement, walked next to Keanu, as if he couldn't believe that in a couple of minutes his sister would see her idol. Having reached the right room, they found that same Maria, lying under an IV drip, but holding a small drawing tablet in her hands. Next to her sat a middle-aged woman, apparently a volunteer, who was trying to cheer the girl up. When the door opened and the actor entered the room, everyone froze, as if they couldn't believe their eyes. Maria realized that it was that same Keanu Reeves in front of her and almost dropped her tablet in confusion. The doctors in the hallway began to open the door slightly to at least take a peek at the stage, but the actor asked them to be quiet so as not to cause unnecessary stress. He quietly approached the bed, smiled, and said, "Hi, I'm Keanu. Your brother loves you very much. He told me a lot about you. Can I sit next to you?" The girl, unable to utter a word, just nodded silently, and tears appeared in her eyes. But these were tears of joy and touching admiration. For several minutes, they chatted as if they were old friends. Reeves asked her with interest what she was drawing, what subjects inspired her, and even offered to look at her drawings. Maria, embarrassed, showed her several works with landscapes of mountains and forests that she dreamed of. Keanu gently noted that she had very good taste and recalled his love for traveling on a motorcycle, when he himself often rode along mountain trails in his youth, enjoying the feeling of freedom. The girl asked with disbelief if it was true. After all, magazines write completely different stories about the lives of stars, and sometimes it is difficult to separate fiction from reality. The actor just laughed and said that everyone has their own personal space in their soul, which helps us feel alive. And for him, such trips are part of this inner world. The guy standing aside did not stop looking at them, and tears were running down his cheeks. He saw that his sister was smiling sincerely for the first time in a long time, as if she had found the hope that she lacked so much. He could hardly have imagined that several random circumstances, his persistent desire to see his idol, and the kind heart of the actor would coincide at one point, giving Maria an emotional charge that could change the course of treatment. Doctors always say, moral attitude is sometimes more important than medication. And here the girl received something that no amount of money could buy: the personal support of a man who became for her a symbol of unbending will in the fight against fate. The climax came when Keanu, as if reading the thoughts of this fragile girl, suddenly offered, "Do you want me to take your works to an art gallery of an acquaintance of mine? I think they deserve attention. Of course, perhaps some details will need to be worked out, but I am sure that people should see how you see the world." Maria looked at him in confusion, trying to understand whether he was joking or not. It seemed that this was an overly bold offer. What gallery, what buyers, when she barely had enough strength for treatment? But Keanu looked at her with such confidence that she barely audibly said, "Yes, I would really like to." And at that moment, the fan standing at the entrance broke down and burst into tears, because he understood that his sister was now being given not just a polite gesture, but a real miracle. Why the boy couldn't hold back his tears at that very moment is clear to anyone who has ever faced hopelessness. Until the very end, he didn't believe that someone could support a sick child so sincerely, and not with cries of sensation or show-off, but with quiet, personal attention and concrete actions. Nurses and volunteers quickly gathered around the girl, also not hiding their tears of joy. Someone was filming all of this on a phone, not to post it on social networks for the sake of hype, but to show other patients later. There is always hope. Keanu, trying to calm everyone down, whispered, "Let's not make a fuss. This is our shared secret. And when Maria gets better, I'm waiting for her at my favorite motorcycle workshop, where we can test a few routes together. Maybe she'll want to get inspired for new landscapes." These words caused an almost childish delight in the girl. She promised that she would do everything possible to recover and make this little dream come true. The actor himself understood that he was a fragile creature who might have a hard time overcoming all the stages of rehabilitation. But a few minutes of communication gave Maria strength, and her brother, looking at her happy face, realized that no amount of money could replace real spiritual contact. Later, when Keanu was about to leave, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble to the medical staff, he quietly asked the foundation coordinators to inform him when Maria would have her next examination. He added that he would like to pass on pleasant surprises to her, and perhaps help with organizing specialists if any difficulties arise. The volunteers promised to do everything possible, and only then Reeves headed for the exit, where numerous guests of the event and the press were already waiting for him. But no one knew what had just happened in one of the wards, and the guy, with cheeks wet with tears, walked next to him, feeling a stream of gratitude brewing inside him. And although later some of the witnesses tried to twist him into details, he refused to talk for a long time, believing that this moment belonged only to him and his sister and the incredibly kind actor. It must be said that the story did not remain completely in the shadows. A few days later, a touching post appeared on the internet. One of the nurses who accidentally witnessed the incident described her emotions from what was happening, calling it shock in a good way. "I have seen many different visits of stars to hospitals, but for a person to so sincerely delve into the fate of each, offer real help and not want any publicity, this is rare." Keanu behaved as if Maria was his own daughter or sister, for whom he is ready to fight and support until the victorious end. I don't know what we would do in this world without such people. The post collected a huge number of likes and comments from those who had already heard about Reeves' good deeds. People shared their impressions of his roles, stories of meetings where the actor showed the same humane participation. But it was this case with Maria and her brother that especially touched hearts. After all, when a fan cried, watching how Keanu helps his sister, months of painful struggle, hopes, and disappointments were invested in these tears. And everyone who empathized understood. Sometimes one short moment can turn the mind upside down and fill life with meaning. Interestingly, Keanu himself has not made any statements since this incident. In one short interview, when he was asked about attending a charity event, he only said that he was happy to support such events because they help people find each other and not feel lonely. No one expected or demanded additional details from him. Perhaps this is why his act becomes doubly valuable. He did not need advertising or PR. In his rare statements on similar occasions, he emphasizes, "If I have the opportunity to change someone's life for the better, even a little, I will do it." This is not valor or heroism. This is normal human behavior. The internet began to discuss what would happen next with Maria. Volunteers said that she had several courses of treatment and rehabilitation ahead of her. And then, if the doctors gave the go-ahead, she would really be able to go where there were mountains and fresh air. Everyone hoped that this meeting with Keanu would become one of the decisive moments in her life, when self-confidence, multiplied by the support of loved ones, would become a real engine for fighting the disease. People wrote comments like, "Hang in there, Maria. We are with you," sent drawings and good wishes. The foundation that organized that evening received additional support from anonymous donors, and many suspected that Reeves was among them again, but he traditionally did not advertise his donations. When this story is retold, the main detail is how one sincere impulse causes deep tears of gratitude. Usually, we're used to seeing Hollywood stars on the red carpet, surrounded by security and fans thirsty for autographs. But here everything was different. No luxury, no flashes of cameras, only a quiet corridor and a hospital room where a person's life balances on the edge of pain and hope. And in such moments, simple support, a word spoken from the heart, is more important than loud slogans. It is not surprising that the fan, who managed to get through to the idol only thanks to perseverance and a lucky chance, could not stand it and burst into tears when he saw how tenderly Keanu communicates with his sister. This episode became proof that a real act touches the soul deeper than any movie images. People who heard about him admitted that they felt a lump in their throat and tears in their eyes. Sometimes our society accustoms us to cynicism and mistrust, to the idea that any kindness hides self-interest. But the meeting of Maria and Keanu breaks these patterns. There is still room for sincere humanity that does not ask for applause and does not look for loud headlines. The world saw an actor who knows how to fully use his popularity not for self-admiration, but to help people who really need it. Isn't this the very facet that makes Reeves so unique in the eyes of millions? He not only plays a hero on screen, he shows heroism in everyday life, in little things that sometimes mean everything to someone. When the discussions of the story reached their climax, there were also skeptics who claimed that such gestures were just show to strengthen the image. But every time another cynical comment appeared, dozens of people stood up for the actor, citing examples of his charity, cases when he simply selflessly helped strangers, not caring about cameras and headlines. Those who personally crossed paths with him in real life confirmed that there was no PR machine behind Reeves's charity. And the most eloquent confirmation of this were the tears of that very young man, which could not be faked or feigned. These were tears of trust and relief, tears of pride that his sister finally received a ray of light in her difficult struggle. So all this only proves once again how important human gestures are. You can spend millions on advertising. You can talk about good deeds for hours in interviews, but nothing compares to being genuinely present next to those who especially need support. In this incredible story, we see how a few minutes of communication can remain in your memory forever and change your destiny. Perhaps Maria will feel a surge of strength, thanks to which she will take another step towards recovery, and her brother will believe that miracles exist not only on the screen. And Keanu, he will continue his path, protecting those who seek help and leaving an impression of a person whose empathy knows no bounds. Such cases tell us that in a world full of vanity and negativity, there is always room for sincerity and compassion. Every time we learn about new actions of Keanu, we are surprised. Did he manage to find an opportunity to help again without asking for anything in return? And every time the answer is the same: yes, he managed. Because for him, this is not a showy action, but nature, his philosophy of life. Cinematography gave him fame, and the pain of losses and trials in his personal life taught him to appreciate every moment that fate gives. He is not afraid to peer into the darkest corners of the human soul, because he himself went through a lot, but preserved the light. In the end, we are once again convinced that what Keanu did is more than fan service or a fan's dream come true. It is a genuine act of heartfelt participation, after which people understand not all stars live in an ivory tower. There are those who remain human, even when the whole world lies at their feet. After all, if Keanu Reeves wanted, he could never appear at such events in person. It would be enough to transfer a large sum to the needs of the foundation. But it is important for him to be there, to see the faces of those he helps, to talk to them as equals, to feel and share their pain and joy. And therefore, when the fans saw all this with his own eyes, he was overwhelmed with emotions that, as it turned out, even the most steadfast guy cannot contain. If this touching story did not leave you indifferent, if you feel that somewhere deep inside you there was a response and faith that goodness still exists, support our video with a like. Subscribe to the channel so as not to miss new inspiring stories from the world of cinema and real life. We try to tell exactly about such stories that restore faith in people. And in the comments, be sure to share what touched you the most. Maybe you have a similar experience of meeting famous people or stories about those who helped unexpectedly and free of charge. Your stories are important because every kind word can become a spark that ignites the flame of hope in many hearts. Thank you for watching and see you soon.